Hello, I am Deputy Chief Al Labrada, and I am the Commanding Officer of Operations Central Bureau. I also served as the Incident Commander for the protest on July 17, 2021 in the area of Wiesbaugh, 2700 Wilshire Boulevard. This briefing is based on what we know at this point. We have not concluded our investigation into this matter, and we will investigate further as information is learned and have initiated a complaint investigation based on allegations made in social media. The final determination of whether the officer's use of force was consistent with our use of force policy will be based on our completed investigation into each instance, which is partially dependent on individuals identifying themselves and providing whatever information they believe to be relevant to this incident. I would like to provide the members of the public with some details leading to the declaration of an unlawful assembly at this location, the use of less lethal munitions by our officers, and why the arrests were made. I also want to clarify misinformation and provide some facts related to social media posts depicting our officers on that day. As you know, on July 3, 2021, a protest took place at the same Wiesbaugh in Rampart area as a result of a video posted online earlier in the week. The video depicted a female patron upset at Wiesbaugh management over an alleged incident in which a transgender woman allegedly exposed herself in the women's locker room. In the days following the video posting, internet chatter spread by both groups supporting and opposing transgender rights. Although the morning of July 3rd for the most part began peaceful, a larger group of approximately 50 to 80 transgender right supporters converged on the smaller group of counter-protesters, and large violent fights ensued. The groups surged to a total of over 200 violent protesters at one point. Due to the situation becoming so volatile, the incident commander made the decision to declare an unlawful assembly. Two announcements were made, one at 12:16 p.m. and the second at 12:26 p.m., both in English and Spanish, numerous times. Unfortunately, this incident resulted in following reported crimes taking place on July 3rd. 1 robbery, 3 violent assault with deadly weapons, a battery on a police officer, 6 battery reports, an annoying text email with a total of 12 reported violent crimes. In the days following the first protest, social media had many posts indicating around 2, with various anti- and pro-transgender rights calling for violence against one another on social media. A second protest was scheduled for July 17, 2021 at the Wiesbaugh. On the morning of July 17, officers identified a significant amount of vandalism surrounding the Wiesbaugh with what appeared to be pro-Antifa graffiti spray painted on walls and buildings. Graffiti was mostly Antifa and keep Nazis out of LA type messages. The vast majority of the graffiti was at the Housing Authority of LA building, which is just east of the Wiesbaugh. The building to the west of the Wiesbaugh was also significantly vandalized, causing thousands of dollars of damage. This is the building at Wilshire and Lafayette. The LAPD plan was to keep the groups separated and facilitate peaceful protest. Efforts were made to gain compliance from the pro-transgender rights group to take one corner in an effort to provide another corner for the anti-transgender rights groups to protest peacefully. A media area was also designated in an attempt to facilitate a safe location for journalists. At approximately 10 a.m., pro-transgender rights groups had grown to approximately 100, and our officers observed several in the group with knives, sticks, and other prohibited items as possible weapons. Our captain at the scene provided various verbal warnings in English and Spanish at the intersections of Rampart and Wilshire, warning for a violation of 55.07 of the Los Angeles Municipal Code, which prohibits weapons at scenes of protest. Efforts were made to identify those with prohibited weapons and give warnings relative to 5507 in an effort to reduce the repeat violence that we saw on July 3rd. As the warning took place, the groups became immediately agitated towards our officers. At approximately 10:40 a.m., a group of approximately 50 to 80 of the anti-transgender rights group had met in the area of MacArthur Park and began to walk quickly westbound on Wilshire Boulevard from Alvarado in direct path to Wiesbaugh. At approximately 11:07 a.m., the anti-transgender rights group reached Coronado Avenue and Wilshire Boulevard, and they were met by squads of LAPD personnel in an attempt to keep the group from attacking or reaching the pro-transgender rights group at Rampart and Wilshire. It appears the pro-transgender rights group had seen the anti-transgender rights group walking westbound and had begun to run to the area with the apparent intent to clash. Both groups were instantly vocal towards one another and threatening, and items were being thrown such as water bottles, smoke bombs, and other objects were being thrown towards each of the groups as well as our officers. The captain at scene immediately declared an unlawful assembly at 11:09 a.m., and it was immediately evident that the group's eager intent was to assault and attack one another. If not for the presence of the officers, the groups would have merged and the confrontation would have turned violent as it did on July 3rd. Since the situation was fluid and volatile, the captain provided the unlawful assembly orders. He observed smoke bombs, other projectiles being thrown at both groups, and as such, the declaration was made and protesters given 5 minutes to leave the area. The captain repeated the dispersal order and provided the protesters with warnings as to how many minutes remained. Both groups remained and continued to try and confront and attack one another and impede law enforcement action to keep the peace and immediately turn their aggression towards our officers. The use of a wireless emergency alert was utilized as well to limit traffic in the area and advise the protesters and the community that the event had turned very violent and was being declared an unlawful assembly. Since the groups were split by Coronado Avenue, the pro-transgender rights group was asked to disperse westbound and the anti-transgender rights group told to disperse eastbound. The anti-transgender rights group instead went south on Coronado and attempted to come around to face the other group, requiring officers to block and continue to push protesters away. In a social media post, an officer is seen using an overhead strike, hitting a male on his shoulder after the male reached for the officer's baton. A review of the officer-involved department body-worn camera shows at approximately 11:08 a.m., the male reached for the officer's baton with his right hand, then his left hand. On Wilshire and Coronado, the pro-transgender rights group protesters were refusing to disperse. And after the unlawful assembly was declared numerous times, several items were thrown at officers, including one male who was throwing what appears to be frozen water bottles at the officers. The individual was identified by officers and pointed out on the line, and as the officers attempted to address a specific threat by the individual, this incident resulted in another social media post when at approximately 11:09 a.m., a female is seen being hit with a beanbag round in the right hand. In this incident, the officer observed that individual in all black clothing and a red face mask attempting to throw what appears to be the frozen water bottle. The officer attempted to fire a beanbag round at this individual. The round missed and unfortunately struck a female in the hand as she maneuvered to get in the way of the officer and the suspect throwing the item.
What's your badge
In a third incident posted to social media, officers are seen running as they fired less lethal rounds. However, in this instance, protesters were in the area of Lafayette and Wilshire Boulevard throwing bottles out counter protesters and officers. Officers moved in that direction to try to cut the group off. Mobile field force squads were able to move the pro-transgender rights group westbound, as this was the direction they were provided during the dispersal order. Once at Rampart and Wilshire in front of the Wiesball, there was another confrontation between protesters, and an unlawful assembly was again declared at 11:53 a.m. At the northwest corner of the intersection, several pro-transgender rights group protesters pushed a female white anti-transgender rights protester to the ground in front of our officers. It is at this point that a protester wearing a black hoodie, black pants, black mask, and black gloves moved around other protesters, and with her right hand that was initially down to her side, raised it up while holding an unknown type of canister. The protester extended her right arm out and dispersed what the officer perceived to be OC or pepper spray towards him, at which point one officer fired a single beanbag round at the protester, striking her in the abdomen area. Upon closer review of the video, it was determined that the protester dispersed silly string at the officer. During our briefings with the officers, they are reminded that protesters are known to carry OC spray, bear spray, and other weapons and use them towards our officers as they have in the past. In fact, as stated earlier, 55.07 of the Los Angeles Municipal Code warnings had been made to the protesters, and OC spray and other weapons recovered throughout the protest site during this event.
Fuck you, Fuck you,
The groups made several attempts to continue to move towards one another. The majority of the crowds dispersed and left the area without further violence. However, a group of approximately 40 individuals who quickly were moving towards the counter-protesters who were attempting to leave the area. This group of remaining protesters refused to leave the area and were surrounded and systematically arrested. No protesters or officers reported any injuries the day of this protest. A total of 41 protesters were arrested and transported to Rampart Station for further processing. 39 were arrested for 409 of the Penal Code, failure to disperse, and all but 2 were cited on a release from custody. One was arrested for 5507 of the Los Angeles Municipal Code for carrying a prohibited item at a protest. The department's posture has been to facilitate a safe and peaceful protest. It was clear through the actions, not only on July 3rd, but on July 17th, that these opposing groups were set on vandalism, destruction, confrontations, and causing harm to one another. As the department made efforts to separate the groups and minimize the potential of significant injury or death to protesters, the groups turned their hostility towards our officers. I am proud of the commitment by the men and women that supported our efforts to keep the peace in light of groups clearly intended on harming our communities. We will continue to support and facilitate peaceful protests, but will not tolerate violent action. We will take appropriate action when criminal acts of destruction, violent behavior, or acts of physical aggression to our officers occurs. Thank you.